Hello and welcome to today's message. This message is based on Matthew chapter 2 verses 1 to 12, and thank you to Julie for reading that passage just prior to this. The title of today's message is A New King in Town. A New King in Town. So what happens when the Queen, our current Queen, comes to town? For many, they go out and try and catch a glimpse of our Queen. You know, they might have a day off, or it might be a special celebration, or go and line the streets so they can catch a glimpse of the Queen. Maybe you've been lucky enough to meet the Queen, whether it's because she came to your workplace or a volunteer or community group that you were a part of, and you had that opportunity to have a few words and say hello. Why am I talking about this? Well, it's because the desire of many is to go and see royalty, to catch a glimpse of them, to interact with them in some way. May some of their specialness run off on us. And the fascinating thing about this account that we have just read or looked at in Matthew chapter 2 is how people interact with this new king, King Jesus, the one who was born king. So we're going to have a look at the different characters and how they interact with this new king. And the first character I want us to have a look at is King Herod. King Herod. So a bit of background about King Herod. Herod was a person of dual heritage, and that meant he was half Jewish. And that created a certain amount of tension between him and the people he was ruling. They didn't like him. But it was also increased, exacerbated, because he was kept in power by the Roman occupying army. So the local inhabitants had two reasons to dislike King Herod. And maybe because of these elements, these background rumblings, Herod was sensitive to his position and his authority. And so when he heard about this new king, he felt threatened. He felt threatened. What is this new king going to do? Is he going to knock me off of my throne? Is he going to try and cause a rebellion or something? But this king is a servant king. He's a shepherd king. One who's loving and caring, and ultimately sacrificed himself rather than using power and authority. But Herod was threatened by this king. And it comes from this seemingly innocent question from the Magi. You know, where is this new king? Where is he born? They've come to the royal, palace, the royal home, expecting to find a new king in the palace, only to discover he's not there. So they ask the question, well, where is he? Where is he? But this raises a few things for me. That someone comes to your house, in your home, and asks you where the new king is, and you don't know who the child is, but you know about him already. How can that be? How can it be possible that these foreign dignitaries have come on a long journey, go to the royal establishment, ask the person they expect to be the father of this child, possibly, where's the baby? But yet still when they ask the question, they know exactly who they're talking about. See, this king is not simply the king of the Jews. This king has a global reputation, even has a timeless reputation, that before this king was born, his rep was known. He would have had, in today's language, several hashtags around him. Hashtag Emmanuel, God with us. Hashtag Savior, God saves through him. Hashtag King of Kings and Lord of Lords. This new king is not a threat to anyone, because his position far exceeds all earthly authority and power. So everyone can find their own position under him. But for Herod, he sees this king as a threat and wants to push him aside and wants to get rid of him in any shape possible. So, what's your response to this child, to this Jesus? Are you putting yourself in the position of Herod and saying, no, I don't want anything to do with him. I find him threatening and challenging. I don't want to acknowledge that he is king. Because if that's your response, then you're positioning yourself alongside Herod, even when there's no need. Because he's God with us. He's the King of Kings. He's the Good Shepherd. He's the loving one. He's the one that sacrifices himself for us. There's no need to respond like that. And then you have the priests and the teachers. Now I find this group in particular fascinating. They had all of the answers. If you were in a classroom situation, this would be the person who puts their hand up, yes, I've got the answer. Ask me. They had all of the answers. So when Herod gathers these group of people together and shares with them the question that he's been asked by the visiting dignitaries, the Magi, they know what the answer is. They've heard about this king to be born, this special king of the Jews that has this global and timeless significance. They say, oh yeah, he's going to be born in Bethlehem. And not just they give their answer, but they give some Old Testament references to back up their answer. Say, yeah, this is why we've said this, as well as this is the answer to your question. That's amazing. So they seem to know everything about this new king that's being born. But what do? They've heard this news from these foreign dignitaries about this king to be born, but they don't go and visit him. They don't go and visit him. Why on earth would they not go? When they know how special this king is, they know where he's going to be born. These people, of all people, should be excited, should be overjoyed, and say, tell you what, guys, let's come along with you. That would have been the normal thing. That would have been the sensible response. We'll come along with you for the ride, and then we can discover this new king together. but they didn't. I don't know what held them back, but here's one or two suggestions. Maybe it was fear. Fear got in the way. Maybe because they knew Herod and how sensitive he was about threats to his power, his position, and Herod was the one that was asking them the question. They didn't volunteer to say, we'll go with you guys and discover this king for ourselves. What about you? What about us? Are there times and situations when we let fear hold us back from discovering more about Jesus for ourselves? Or going along with someone and supporting them and encourage them as they find and discover Jesus for themselves? If we do that, then we put ourselves in the position of the priests and the teachers of the law. We might know the answers, but why don't we help? Help others to discover for themselves. Maybe they could have offered some guidance on the journey. No, they're locals. They know the territory. They know where Bethlehem is, at least. They could have said, let me come with you, and I'll go along with you until the border of Bethlehem. I'll take you to the edge of town, and then you can look for him yourself from there, because, we know it's there, but we don't know exactly where in Bethlehem. So we take you as far as we can, and then search yourself. Do we sometimes hold back because we don't know the complete picture or know the full story? Then don't put ourselves in the position of these priests and teachers, and offer the help that you can to help others discover Jesus. Because he is a timeless king, and he is a global king, and he's the King of Kings. But the other thing about these priests and teachers, which I find quite sad and disappointing, is they have this knowledge about the one to be born, but they aren't interested in going to discover him for themselves. They don't want to have this relationship that is possible for them. To go and meet this person, have that living encounter, that the invitation, that the message of the Magi brings to them. It brings an opportunity for them to go and discover for themselves. Perhaps they didn't go because the message came in an unacceptable package. See, they were people from out of town. They were, foreign dignitaries. They're the unexpected messengers of God. How do we know for sure that their information is accurate and credible? They're not one of us. They're not a priest or a teacher. They're not even locals. Maybe the package that surrounded the message put them off. Then I want to encourage you this day. No matter what the package is surrounding the message of Jesus, don't be put off. It's not about the package, it's about the message. It's about the person. It's about his reality. Because he is King. And he's the King of Kings. And he's the Lord of Lords. And him and his message is timeless and global. And he invites you and me to have a relationship with him. Don't be a priest or a teacher. But the other shocking thing about it is maybe that they were conning themselves. They had all this head knowledge, and they thought that they were living out this faith, and they had a good relationship with God. But the fact that they didn't go clearly demonstrates their unwillingness to go anything more than head knowledge or tradition. And it's not the head knowledge, all of the traditions and the practice that make a living relationship with Jesus the most exciting things. These things, as good as they are, and they are good, and I encourage you to participate, but you participate in them because of the relationship you already have. You have the relationship, then you participate in those things, not the other way around. Please, don't be a priest and a teacher. And then you come to the Magi. You could say they're the stars of the show. The wise men, as sometimes they're called. And they come on a long journey. We don't know exactly how long and how far they came, but, we're talking a good distance. It's at least, crossing an international border. And we know how difficult that is these days. But what starts them on this journey? They start their journey because of a star. A star of all things. They take notice of this unusual star that they see in the sky and decide to go on this long journey across international borders to go and discover this king of global significance and timeless quality. It's amazing. If you were in their position, if I was in their position, I don't know if I would have travelled all that way and gone through all that effort and trouble just because I saw a star. But they did. And for them, there was something about that star that communicated a message about this king to be born. That meant they wanted to go and discover for themselves who this king is. And so off they trek. Off they go on this long journey with an uncertain end, just believing that they would get to meet this new king. They didn't realise that they were going to have some complications at the other end. They didn't know all the facts. In fact, they probably had a lot more unanswered questions than answered ones. And sometimes in my role, I come across people and they engage with me and they kind of ask questions and challenge certain ideas and stuff. And that's all fine, that's all pleasant. But at some point in the conversation, they say, well, I don't know enough. I don't know enough. And this episode, this encounter with the Magi, and then following a star, reminds me that it's not about how much you know. It's about following. They had sufficient to start following. They didn't have all the details. They didn't have all of the answers, but that didn't stop them. As we journey towards Christmas, and whatever plans you may or may not have, whatever celebrations you've done already or looking forward to, don't let a lack of information stop you from going on a journey to discover Jesus for yourself. One of the first people to meet Jesus, knowing who he was, were these magi. And they didn't know all of the details. And sometimes people kind of challenge me and say, I really want God to show himself and say, to prove to me that he exists and, he's real. And I can understand that question. And particularly if you've gone through some testing and trying times. But I simply wonder how many people saw the star. The star was out there. It was in the sky. It didn't hide itself. It was plain for all to see. And this group of people saw it and responded to the message that they received from that star. They were willing to accept the clues and the evidence that was there. Rather than shutting their eyes to it and turning away and asking for more and demanding from God, I want this, I want that, I want the next. They were willing to accept the clues, the signs, the evidence that was available to them. And I want to encourage you. If you're someone who's not sure, possibly at the start of their journey, like the Magi, please accept the clues and the signs and the evidence that is around you and follow it. Follow it. And then discover who Jesus is. Get to meet him for yourself. Another fascinating fact about the Magi was their joy. And their joy after going to Herod. Because they went to Herod expecting him to be able to tell them exactly where to go. And he couldn't, and his team couldn't. I told him a rough area. But then, when they left Herod, they saw the star again. And they were overjoyed. It's like, yes, that symbol, that sign that was there before isn't there again. Let's keep following. And I wonder if our lives are like stars to the people around us. Are we the clues? Are we the symbol? Are we the person pointing the way towards Jesus? Are our lives like stars? I encourage you. Maybe we should pray and ask the Lord to make our lives more star-like so that the people around us can follow us towards Jesus as we build up towards Christmas. Perhaps you'd like to pray for some of the people that you know, friends, neighbours, family, that have yet to go on this journey and discover Jesus for themselves. But it wasn't just about joy for the Magi. It was also about worship. And when they got to their destination, and they met Jesus, their joy transformed into worship. They acknowledged him for who he is and gave him what was due, not just the gifts, but a position in their lives, an adoration, an excitement. Wow, we have met this King. And that has touched my life, so much so that I'm willing to worship him. So as we conclude, who are you in this story? Are you one of those characters that actually want to see the new king? Or are you like King Herod and have rejected him because you feel threatened by him, even though he's loving and kind and gracious and a servant and sacrificed himself? Or are you in the teacher's and the priest position, knows a lot of stuff, but only gives limited help and isn't personally involved, more concerned about the traditions and customs rather than a relationship? Or do you count yourself like the Magi, who have taken the clues that are available and have followed them and have found him, and the joy and excitement of the journey has turned into worship? And if you've already made that journey for yourself, then are you the star to the Magi? Or are you being like the star to the Magi, to the people around you in this day and this time? God bless you.